1915. The First Great War has entered its second year. This conflict started because of international rivalries, a nationalist-inspired assassination, and many other reasons has now spread to every corner of the globe. The main theatre remains the Western Front, where millions of French, British, Belgian and German soldiers war in brutal conditions. Young men on both sides are cramped into marshy, diseased trenches until orders are finally given to attack. Many battles are fought on the Western Front during 1915, all of which failed to achieve much gain. The first 3 years of World War I can be explained by the gross imbalance of technology at that time. Inventions like barbed wire, machine guns, and heavy, long-ranged artillery made it incredibly easy to defend large swathes of land against an attacking force. So for the year of 1915, the Western Front would remain paralysed. However, this was not the only theatre of war, as for one, the expansive Russian Empire, a member of the Entente Alliance, was fighting an almost separate war of its own in the east. Germany, along with its ally, the Empire of Austria-Hungary, had seen a lot more success on this front, as the sheer magnitude of the border between them made it simple for entire armies to bypass trench systems and push deep into enemy territory. The Russian Empire, ruled by the autocrat Tsar Nicholas II, was also battling the Ottoman Empire, a German ally in the east and a historic rival to the Russian state. Russia was suffering food and supply shortages as it was underdeveloped compared to other European nations. This and a history of military failures, notably against Japan a decade earlier, had made Nicholas II and the war itself more and more unpopular to the Russian people. In the Atlantic, a German U-boat sinks the SS Arabic. 3 Americans are killed, and in response to further US warnings, Germany officially ends all attacks on passenger ships. The British in the Middle East advance on Baghdad, but are halted by the Ottoman forces at the Battle of Ctesiphon. The British are then forced to retreat and are besieged at Kut. More success is found for the Turks in Gallipoli, as the Ottoman forces there prevented the mostly Australian and New Zealander expeditionary force from making it off the beaches. On December 18, in what would be called one of the most brilliantly executed plans of the war, every Allied soldier was evacuated overnight from the peninsula without any Ottoman detection. 1915 was a strategic victory for the Central Powers. All major offensives by the Allies had failed, and due to successful additions to the alliance, Serbia was now subdued and Russia weakened. On the Western Front, Germany launches a devastating offensive towards the town of Verdun. German General Erich von Falkenhayn said in his own words that the plan for this battle was to bleed France white in its defence. Verdun becomes a bloodbath, with hundreds of thousands of men on both sides minced in the muddy hills near the town. In April, Irish Republicans revolt against the British. This would become known as the Easter Rising, which would last for 6 days before being put down in deadly street warfare. The brutality of the British crackdown on members of the revolt would scar the reputation of Westminster in the eyes of an increasingly Anglophobic Irish population. In the Middle East, British forces at Kut surrender. General Townshend leads 9,000 Indian and English soldiers into captivity. It was around this time when Britain began to seek support from Arab leaders in the region. Britain promises the creation of an Arab state that could rule over all the Arabian Peninsula. The throne of this new caliphate was promised to Hussein bin Ali, Sharif of Mecca, who began a revolt in the Holy Land and defeated the Ottomans in June. Little did he know, however, Britain and France had signed the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement, which planned after the war to divide the Middle East into French and British zones of control. This would be kept from Hussein and the public until his useful usefulness to the Allies had run out. After the Battle of Jutland, the only major naval battle of the war, in the summer of 1916, the Allies had planned multiple major offensives from the east and the west. The Russians launched theirs first, breaking through the Austro-Hungarian lines. This costly but effective Russian attack succeeds in forcing armies from France and Italy to move to the east and stabilize the front. On the western front, the British and French are ready to launch their summer offensive at the Somme. Hopes are high that the battle would break through the German fortifications and further distract Germany from Verdun. However, the artillery fails to disable German defences and droves of British troops are cut down by the thousand. In the space of a few hours, Britain suffers 57,000 casualties, making the 1st of July the bloodiest day in the history of the British Army. Field Marshal Douglas Haig, otherwise known as the Butcher of the Somme, continues to order attacks, and the battle would rage for another 5 months and would witness the first practical use of the tank. Because of Russian success in the Bolshevik offensive, Romania joined the Allies, breaking their secret alliance with Germany. The Romanian king and his cabinet would launch an initially successful offensive into Transylvania, but Bulgarian, German and Austro-Hungarian forces would counterattack, pushing them back. Over the next few months, Romania is overrun and its armies would take up position alongside Russia on the eastern front. In November, Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria and King of Hungary, dies. He is succeeded by his grandnephew Karl. Also in Britain, Prime Minister Herbert Asquith resigns and is replaced with the Liberal candidate David Lloyd George. By the end of the year, peace mediations led by Woodrow Wilson fail, as neither side would offer concessions. Kaiser Wilhelm and his inner circle knew that war with the Allies would eventually be lost if a war of attrition continues for much longer. Therefore, Germany resumes unrestricted submarine warfare on the 1st of February in an attempt to starve Britain into submission first. German High Command knew that this sink-on-sight tactic would lead to inevitable American intervention, so German Foreign Secretary Arthur Zimmermann sent a telegram to Mexico City encouraging Mexico to attack America if Germany and the US ended up in war. This would be intercepted by Britain, who would, after considerable hesitation, pass it along to America. This blunder on the part of Germany would put further pressure on US President Woodrow Wilson to declare war on the Central Powers. After many more German provocations, America finally joins the war on the 6th of April. In Russia, bread shortages and military defeat leads to revolution. The Tsar abdicates and a provisional government takes power. This new Russian Republic promises to continue the war, but in the following days the Russian armies would start to desert en masse. The Russian Republic attempted an offensive on the eastern front, but a counterattack by the Germans renders the Russian military ineffective in battle, and the Germans push forward unopposed. In the western front, all through spring and summer, more British and French offensives are launched. In response to French losses, General Nivelle is sacked as French commander-in-chief and replaced by General Pétain, who promises no more suicidal attacks. In Greece, King Constantine is forced to abdicate and Greece joins the Allies. Soon after, America will begin to adopt a new system of goods transportation. Merchant ships would be grouped together and act as convoys patrolled by both British and American navies. After the adoption of this new system, U-boats would, month by month, sink less and less ships, decisively turning the tide in the war at sea. On July 19th, the German Reichstag passes the Peace Resolution Act, calling for peace talks to begin between the Allies and Germany. This is ignored by the German High Command, made up of General Hindenburg, Ludendorff, and the Kaiser himself. By 1917, these three men had essentially created a military dictatorship which would have the final say on all German matters. In the Middle East, the British avenge their previous defeat at Kut and take the city. British armies are then marched on and occupy Baghdad. 6 weeks later, Arab forces under Hussein bin Ali and the British Army of Egypt defeated the Ottomans at the Third Battle of Gaza. This victory allowed the joint Allied armies to liberate Jerusalem, ending 400 years of Turkish rule. On the Eastern Front, Russia is taken over by the communist Bolshevik faction led by Vladimir Lenin, and an internal civil war begins between them and a coalition of imperialist and republican sympathizers known as the Whites. Romania signs an armistice with the Central Powers on December the 9th, knowing that Russia was too weak to support them militarily, and 6 days later, Russia would follow suit. The Allied Eastern Front is now no more. The Entente had lost an ally in the east, but gained one in the west. The war had over 1917 taken a turn in favour of the Allies, but with Russia gone, millions of German troops were now freed up. The fate of the war now rests on which army, the Americans or newly available German troops, could give the final blow and knock out the other. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to not miss the next installment in this series. I'm a small channel trying to provide the highest quality videos possible to you, so your help will be greatly appreciated.